says go to dashboard design page, and then you will go to this page where on the bottom there is a Google Apps button, and if you hit this Google Apps button here, then you can sign in, and the sign in is simply what was there before. I can actually just do the presentation from this sign in. The username is AOD underscore customer, and that's right on the website on that other page before.
Excuse me, Ho, I might have missed something, but what was the initial URL to access this?
Action Outcomes Dashboard.com. Action Outcomes Dashboard.com. You forget anything at all, just Google my name, Ho Haryadi, or T Ho Haryadi, in LinkedIn. I have the benefit of a rare name, so you will see pages and pages that's just me before you see anybody else. And the first thing that pops up will be my LinkedIn page, and of course my website and so on are on my LinkedIn page. And then it's just AOD CUST 3218. And again, that is right on the website, the page that you saw before. And then you will come to Google Apps. And in Google Apps, you go to Drive and Docs. I need to update it because in the meantime, Google Apps did change a little bit. And then you should see this, which is the entire gamut of things, which starts with the presentation, which has a few slides, and then there's all these demos, which we're not going to go through all of them, but I will pick two representative ones that sort of gives you the spread. There's dashboard after dashboard after dashboard you can create. I created all these, and the point is to custom create it with the customer, starting with the input page, but actually before that starting with a flowchart. And it's amazing how people will not know their own flowchart, will not have a flowchart, or they have a flowchart of their process. It's not complete or accurate, which becomes apparent in the first few minutes. Just a small group of people around the room. With Scott, it was the CEO and a couple of the salespeople, one from Iowa and one from here, all in the same room, just sitting around talking about what it is that they do every day. And then you have O and A's in terms of, oh, I thought you did it this way. Oh, no, I'm doing it this way. You didn't know that, and so on, so forth. And the first flowchart that was given to me by the CEO doesn't look at all like the flowchart we have now before we started creating the input sheet, and from there the dashboard in terms of what they want to see. The nice thing about Google Docs or Google Apps is that you can access it linked to a website, just like I did here. Or you can access it through Gmail. It has to be Gmail, but as long as you have Gmail, then anybody that you give permission to, and only those that you give permission to, for specific documents, and only those documents that you give them permission to, they can have access to it, and they can be in it at the same time as you are. In fact, you can see, because colored blocks will appear, and you hover over the colored block, and it'll show you the name of the person who is happening to be there looking at it at the same time, looking at you while you're looking at them, and etc. I just go to Gmail, and with Google Apps, they will always have a long list that is available to you to show you what they are working on. And then I think there's a second list in terms of what has been requested of them that they are working on. And that request could have come from you. You can constantly ask for features and improvements and gadgets that they will continue to work on.
Would you mind giving just a sentence or two definition of what Google Apps is, in case someone's not familiar with it?
Google has created a collaborative work environment that has spreadsheets, word processor applications, and presentations that emulate all of the Microsoft applications that are directly interchangeable with them, with one huge difference that I believe to date, and I've been following the progress, that Excel has not been able to emulate this. You can be in the same spreadsheet at the same time with half a dozen people, and you can see each other, and you can therefore even without the Google Hangout video, you can have a telepresence. We do low tech with Scott, where Stephanie is in Iowa, Scott is here, and somebody else is here in the office, and we just the three of us with me want to talk, and I'm in Hillsborough. And we just go into the document that we are going to make changes to, which is the dashboard that we're working on. And we can see everybody, and we can just talk on the phone, have a little teleconference three-way on the phone, and we accomplish the objectives. Of course, technology is even more available now with Google Hangout and video and so on, where you can have several people on the video circuit through Google. Whereas before you have to have more work, and you have to have, in the old days you have to have an MCU, a multi-point conference unit, which is $25,000 and so on. Now it's all free and available to the every person participant. So here we have the presentation for today. And I will run through quickly, just making basically a couple or 3 points that then will be illustrated through the live demos. Google and especially the open source movement with Linux and so on has put tremendous pressure on both Microsoft and Apple to become more open source like. And Google has taken the lead by being open source like. And I think that that's important. Open source simply means everything is free and available. If you're in Linux, you don't pay for anything. Not your operating system, and not any of the thousands of software that is instantly available to you. And so I called it the power technology for transparency, which is the power tooling of high accountability in business and in government. And belatedly, I found out that there's a lot of... what is transparency? First of all, it's real-time, see you, see me. And the word real-time is the key concept here. And I will show you a couple of things where real-time is absolute in my world. See you, see me is actually a term that is beginning to float around, or has been floating around in the internet world, where literally that's what it is, see you, see me. In the same time, as it happens. As I input the next client, you see me doing that, and you see all the numbers changing as I'm inputting yet another client with features X, Y, Z, different from the features A, B, C of the previous client. Knowing what you do and what I do. Seeing where you are in your process and where I am in my process. And this in particular is illustrated by the historic events that occurred at W.B. Du Bois, where Betty was CEO. And I first discovered the power of the ability to collaborate naturally, where everybody becomes adult overnight in accountability, without anybody saying anything. And it becomes a level playing field. Betty was the CEO, and there's a lot of frontline workers and so forth, all participating in an accreditation process that was going to be deadlined 8 months from the time I started. You don't do accreditation in 8 months. You do accreditation over a period of 2 years, maybe a year and a half if you're lucky. And this is for COA from Wall Street, the difficult one. The government agencies are even afraid to. But Betty wanted the best for us. And the best means the most difficult. I said, how are we going to do this? There's 150 people working here. I don't know anybody from Adam or Eve. I don't know anything about the North Carolina regs. And this is a different agency. I've done accreditation, but this is a different agency. And I will show you a little demo for that later on to show you that simply by seeing check marks that you put there yourself, you become concerned, both afraid and excited about the prospect of your own successful completion and the whole thing becoming complete. We got done early in that short time that we had, and we were commended by the accreditors. And the rest is history. Seeing where you are and where I am in the process. So we each can do something in time. If I see that you, Brandon, are beginning to fall behind and Dennis is getting ahead, and we all know that, then we're all going to jump and help Brandon. And that's exactly what happened. Nobody was needed to be told because everybody needed everybody else's work in accreditation, creating the policies and procedures and the reports and so on. So Everybody was naturally, without any coordinating person. I was the project manager, but I was just going around being the friendly guy. Can I help you? Can I help you do some legwork and so on? And I didn't have to do anything else. And it happened just fantastic. And finally, I coined the term the windshield view. You wouldn't drive a car, would you, without a windshield? Would you drive a company without a windshield? You do it all the time since time immemorial. Now, there's a bump about to happen. And then there's a bump and a dent. And then report-wise, a month later, you found out, oh, there was a bump and a dent. Let's now analyze what happened that led up to that bump and caused that dent so we can prevent it the next time. And in the meantime, while you're yakking about that month-old thing that is totally not real time, another bump of a different type is forming, or maybe a serious accident, because you don't have what is called a windshield view. Forget about the dashboard. The dashboard is more indirect. The oil, well, if the oil is low, your car's not going to blow up right now. But if somebody is coming head on, you're going to have a disaster right now. And unless you don't, it's a wonder how companies have survived and continue to survive without the windshield view. So what is the effect of transparency? First of all, there's information-driven action. And then there's action-driven information. Well, it's a chicken and egg. It's a continuous cycle. Action and information drive each other, and with the action-driven information, you will end up with natural high accountability, with a level playing field of responsibility, and natural maximized group learn. Peter Senge style, if anybody is into the MIT thing, where you don't have to have anybody ever having heard of the name Peter Senge or having gone to a workshop where organizations become learning organizations. You naturally, instantly, and right at that moment are a learning organization, because you will see, oh, the way we're doing it right now is shaping things up this way, but shifting things that way. Let's change that and tweak that and so on. Because it's not the software, because it's something that was created jointly between all the people around the table and myself, showing them a few simple tools, keeping it simple, and only restricting it to what is necessary, everything that is necessary, according to our current experience. No software can ever emulate that kind of flexibility and on-timeness. Now, technology tools today include Google Docs by design, social media by natural default. A lady who originated from Australia, and I don't remember her name, was sitting here bringing this home to me when she talked about how Facebook creates inevitable natural accountability for the owner of the company. Because once you put it out there, you can't take it back. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube into the media, you can't take it back. So you have to be very responsible and thoughtful in terms of what you put out there about yourself or your company or your micro business in the media, and then you become accountable to the whole world. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, that is where this comes in. And this is where the media creating natural accountability comes in, by natural default. Telepresence by choice. I recently attended the 11th mega conference, which you didn't have for 4 years, which is a huge worldwide video conferencing technology-based connection between a bunch of institutions, mostly educational institutions, one business this time. And the term telepresence was coined a while back in high-tech video conferencing. I go back to the days when it was ISDN based, and now it's Google Hangout. But the telepresence with the video will make no more necessary trains, planes, automobiles, and hotels. I have a friend who is a motel owner who subsists on weekly renters because he says the whole industry, but not so much mine, but the big hotels, are suffering because nobody travels anymore. It's obsolete, it's costly, it's not real-time efficient, because now you can just video conference and have the... And I've been at Cisco a number of times. Recently I've developed a relationship with a person at Cisco, Renee, who takes us through the bowels of Cisco, where there's $1.5 billion worth of equipment in one big room, and one rack is like a few $1 million. And he took us to the telepresence room with 3 big LCDs that are contiguous and Brandon was there a couple of times with me, creates the presence of the other person. But even in a small tube, you can create a sense of us being there together, where I couldn't remember the last time I talked to you. Was that over the tube or live? Because it didn't make any difference. Especially with all these things becoming available, such as the technology-based models of operations dashboards, project dashboards, program landscape dashboards, sales dashboards, multi-project life management dashboards. I have demos of all these on the web, and I will show you just a couple today to illustrate those points. But the final point, here, and the scale I found is not only just small and micro businesses, but say startups under 10 people, such as we are working with right now, to medium-sized operations. Issues of real-timeness become a little bit of an issue. But if you set it up right from the beginning and you don't put into this kitchen sink everything that you can think of, but only the things that you want and you're going to make actionable for yourself, because it is something that you're going to make a decision. And the dashboard only shows things that at a glance you can see, okay, I need to do something about this, and I can leave that alone because this is red and this is green. And I will show you how that literally is. Then you can have any size organization not have the problem of sensory overload and a mix of the annual data and the current data and so forth all on one dashboard. You become cross-eyed. There's so many beautiful looking dashboards. I'm working with a company in India where you can outsource the making of dashboards in Excel. And it's all suffers from the same problem. It's too much stuff. It's not stuff that you're going to act on right now. And it is a lot of times not real time. And then there's very large scale government operations that will suffer from real-time issues, but I applaud any government, including our own, that is using, or any kind of national movement. In the third world countries, this is really very popular, using social media and other things to really create a real-timeness between the secrets of the government to the point that you can crack them open and the public. And you see how that's happening right now. And then there's social media metrics that, of course, you guys here are experts on. And these are the final slides and the final points. Making one point only is about real-timeness versus accountability. If it's 100% real-time, it's a non-optional must-have in this system where I'm talking about. If it's not right now, as you are inputting data, Dennis, and as Betty is seeing from the other end what's going on right now. If you lose that, you lose mileage. And this is a theoretical curve that I just created. Red is accountability, and blue is real-timeness, if you can measure real-timeness. Total real-time is meaning you put in right now, I can see it, everybody else can see it. We all can be on it together at the same time.
So it's a perceptual real-timeness.
You pointed out something very important. Although the real-timeness is actually real-time, because he actually is putting in the client, and I can see that. To the extent that there is perception of real-timeness, to that extent, you will have this dynamic. And that is the saving grace when, as a situation like with our client, if there's proprietary software, and you have Janica laboriously putting in all the things about this client, new client Betty, in the software, and then you have to put it into your own again, well, it defies the purpose. Now you have to find a way. Now the only way that I found so far is an EDI back-end, automated EDI, back into our system, and I already created a receptacle with VLOOKUP and other functions that will automatically sort itself out. But then by then it will be probably almost 24 hours old. But as long as there's a perception of sufficient real-timeness, you probably will still be somewhere here in the curve here, and you still are close to 100% accountability. Whereas once you go down here, then accountability will begin to trail off. Accountability trails off very quickly once you move away. So you want to have real-timeness maybe no more than 1 day here, if you can't help it, and still strive to have the 1 day eliminated. One more slide, same point, accountability as reports age. but it was a given. How old is the report, the newest report that you have most of the time? It's not today's data, that's impossible. The report that you have is, yesterday's or the day before if you're lucky, but most of the time if it's a paper report, it's a week to a month old. And then you look at the trend from last year and so on, but wait a minute, what's this before? What is in the windshield? We got no windshield. Now, so the age of report, as it increases here, whatever the increase is, the accountability will go down, and eventually you will have, hardly a semblance of accountability. Not because people are not accountable, but because people are working with old and unsynced information. So that is.
So, quick question.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
I used a lot of crystal reports in late 90s, early 2000. Is the dashboard the evolution of tools like that, where you generate reports on the fly? Is this the next generation of?
Right, and there's two kinds of dashboards. There's dashboards that you buy, and the dashboards that you make. Dashboards that you make are a living organism. They may not be the same dashboard system anymore a week from now or a month from now. Every day you may make changes. And what I do is I train the people to maintain the basic dashboard changes that they can do themselves, and that they only call me when they need to. And then I can take care of a larger number of clients where I can just be at the cutting edge of their most difficult problems. But the dashboard is a living organism. That's what I'm calling a dashboard here. The dashboards that you see in BI are huge dashboards that have this difficulty in terms of adjusting and changing. So how do you change things quickly? They do make it changeable, but not as easy as this. I want to go back to my AOD and my quick demos, and you can see all the quick demos. Come on. And then the first thing that I want to show is a process operations demo, which is either for a service organization or for a sales organization. This was sort of a service organization. There's arrows that will come out eventually, but it's kind of slow. One thing that is nice about Microsoft is that you can quickly create the graphics in Excel, and quick. It's still plodding here, but you can pretty much do.
That's just the bandwidth,
True. But the arrows are just arrows. So there's a referral or self-referred if it's a service industry or if it's a sales organization. There will be an intake, and there will be an assessment of the intake if it's a mental health client, and then you either accept the client or you refer out because the profile didn't fit, and then you assign the client to their first service, and the first service may be the therapist, or maybe somebody before the therapist, and then there's a second session and a third session. Here the arrows are beginning, and then from the first service on, it's billing ready. Because the green is what matters in the end. No matter how benevolent and giving a non-profit you are, if you ain't making money, you're going to be on the ground. It's no different from anything. And so billing ready, and then is it billed, and then is it reimbursed? Billing ready and billed, reimbursed. Same thing with a sales organization. First of all, is it now converted into an order, or is it still just an interest? And what's that percentage? And then once it's an order, the fulfillment process will be particularized, and you put in dates. Most of the inputs will be dates to see how quick things are moving, and making sure that you have alarms that tell you whether something is moving too slowly or not, instantly as it happens. And if that day parameters change, then that moment you will see something that used to be green now turn yellow, or maybe turn red. And the thresholds of that you determined yourself. And you can change it as experience dictates that you should change the thresholds for the colors, and so on. So first you create a flowchart. And this is a simple looking flowchart. we had with our client, we had a similar simple-looking flowchart that Scott sat down with me, and then once we sat down with just 2 other people, the flowchart changed radically, completely, and so on. And then immediately the CEO became very educated, and he had some very specific opinions in terms of the tracking and the dashboard needs that arise out of his new insight. Right then and there. Not another meeting. It was in the next 5-10 minutes, After 60 minutes, we have accomplished miles and miles.
So one thing you told me that you realized was that in building this flow chart with everyone looking at it, they discovered that several people had an entirely different model in their head of how the workflow was working.
Yes, and miraculously somebody kept working.
The key person in charge.
Right, exactly. So there were 3 different perceptions.
Yeah.
Now there's one perception, because I need that one perception for me to create the input
So you
sheet.
start by building a workflow.
Workflow,
Process,
that's critical.
right?
That's critical.
From the beginning of the prospect customer all the way through, or whatever.
Right. From the
process.
time the phone rings, literally, from the phone rings to the time that money is in the bank and a satisfied report comes from the customer.
And you would have multiple people on the phone, key people, to be able to verify, is this the way it actually goes, right?
If that is the way.
Okay.
Because there are other ways too where the customer is connected to the system and they can just put on there when things are okay or when things are screwed up. And,
I meant
yeah.
to build the initial internal workflow.
Oh, correct.
Right. So you have
Correct.
several people. Like
Yes.
if we were in a company of 3 people,
Right.
it'd be all 3 of us going, wait a second, that's not what happened. It goes to Judy's desk first.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
Now,
a key
in this
point.
case, we happen to be face to face, which still is good to have, or if not, at least with video conferencing, because from people's gestures and facial expression, you see that, while Dennis says, he seems doubtful and he seems like beginning to slump into a question mark. And I said, wait a minute, Dennis, you're not sure about this, are you? And I can see him on video conference. So this is then simply the whole flow chart. All those boxes become the headers of the flow chart that is now a spreadsheet. And you put in the names and so forth, but then you put in the data sets, the data sign, the date of first service, and beyond that, the date that you build, the date that you got the money, and so on. And then the intervals are done averaged according to the way you want to see it averaged, maybe month to date as well as whatever, and so on. And as a result, there's no more periodic reports to be done. Nobody has to do reports. When you need your weekly report, it'll spit out the weekly report automatically, a monthly report, whatever. We can design that. And then you will have the dashboards. The operations manager dashboard is probably the most important one to, put enough detail in it and yet have oversight. And I sat down with the operations manager, and if I have, and he says or she says, this is what I want to see. And it's a somewhat involved dashboard, but still for the operations manager, it has everything that he wants to see that at a glance, and not anything that he doesn't want to see. And these are live, numbers. Of course, we use the today function for those that are familiar with Excel. It's the same formulas. The formulas in Excel and in here are exactly the same. But I can change this today because otherwise it keeps changing. From 9:14 to 9:17, 10, and you see all of a sudden some stuff turned red. And for purposes of future demos, I'll turn it back to, it doesn't want to. 9:14. So if from the 14 to the 17 there was no activity, then all the numbers would change. And in 3 days there's no input, and 0.77 intakes per day becomes under 0.75. 0.75 was the threshold we set as a group, and then the over becomes under and it turns red, and so on. Sometimes under is good when it needs to be fast. Sometimes over is good if it needs to be so many. Yes,
so each person on the team has their input screen.
Correct.
And then they
each person on the team, the input
That's
screen
the
is one.
windshield, right.
Yeah, but each person on the team has their own dashboard the way they want it, and they designed it initially with me, and eventually they can just modify it as they go now. And you can have.
Theory, this is the way to streamline processes almost to absolute streamline. The fail point being if they're not looking at their dashboards.
How critical?
Now,
Yes.
do these systems that you're showing us here also carry true workflow process where upon any change requiring their knowledge, they are automatically noticed via some communication, mean like email or page?
We can make it that way.
Okay, good.
Yes.
That's the answer. Thank you.
Right. And like a historic figure in Greek mythology once said, a mind more acute than mine, a programmer, can solve the difficult things that I may not be able to solve very easily. But yes, so I will talk to Brandon, and Brandon will help me. And how do you link that to automatic email? And maybe an utterly simple thing that I just haven't done
Brandon
before.
will say PCK.
Don't update the data, then they and everyone else will see they didn't update it. So it's a self-motivating.
Yes, and if you don't update it, then everybody will see that it wasn't updated and say something is wrong.
Right.
You know, if somebody all of a sudden got sick, acutely sick, transported to the ER and so on, there was no time to notify anybody. You will notice that by the behavior of the dashboard. It's input and the absence of input is one and the same thing. So once there's transparency, just like with the Facebook thing, once it's out there and you've put yourself out there and you've agreed as a group to do this, you're going to see each other. And generally the inclination is not to find somebody at fault, deficient, and beat them over the head, but to see that there's some trouble somewhere and everybody swoops down to help and fix it.
Can I take a real simple example? Since, just want you to get to meet. This is Carl in the background, from
Hi.
the head of the two clubs. So, but if he were wanting to analyze the workflow of, let's say, wedding events here, you know, and how it flows through the whole business, you'd first sit down with the team and build the workflow and make sure everyone understands the same workflow, right?
Right.
That's
then
step one.
That's step one.
And then step two would be you start building what data he needs.
What is important to Carl at this time in your current perception, which after you do this for a week or a day, you may realize, wait a minute, what I find more important now, thinking about it, is X, Y, Z. We change it right then. And after about a week or two, you will have a useful process that has already escalated your level of self-functioning from where you thought you were before.
And do you start at management, or do you start at the individuals, or kind of work from
All
both
together.
ends? All
So you
together.
do it
If it's a
during
huge
application
organization,
design.
yes.
A JAD.
Yes, if it's a huge organization, then at least like we did with Betty with 150 people, we had Betty and department heads
I see.
around the table, and then each department head has the option to realize, wait a minute, in our next powwow, which would be in a few days, I will need Janica, because Janica is the expert on this, which you were just talking about, brought up. It's very dynamic.
Oh, I've been in a couple of JADs where I've actually seen top management learn for the very first time what their people do.
Yeah.
And that's as a rule will be the case. As a rule will
It
be the
happens.
case.
Well, then, yeah, but this happened. I mean, I saw it happen in a very small, very effective business, and the head just did not know that was the way it was working. I mean, they were getting good results.
And with that also
Right.
comes more streamlining, because the question will invariably come up, well, why are we doing that? Isn't that a duplication? Isn't that some sort of redundancy? Or can't that be better assimilated in this process? I mean, this is a healthy thing to do in any business environment.
Right. You find out that the norm is there's something sick about your organization. You'll find out that that's the norm. But you have no idea, and somehow with the chronic illness, you adapt to it, and you just function like that for the next 10 years with the chronic illness still
Or
there.
you succumb.
The ones who die. Yeah, so this is what the CEO wanted, for example. Well, I don't want to see all those numbers. I want to just see a couple of numbers and green and red for certain things. And
about 5 minutes.
okay, and then billing is just concerned about their workloads. I just want to know how much is billing ready and how many are pending that will fill my billing pipeline. And then everybody is concerned about what comes out of the end of the pipeline, which is another dashboard where the dollars come out, because those dollars are my dollars, says every employee. If those dollars don't come out or they begin to decline, I'm going to have delays in my pay or worse. And some of us will get laid off.
The chef is only worried about cost of carbon, right?
He's got a lot of worries.
And you have a few each day, right?
Put Carl right at the top.
Okay, one more example.
Google View, is that what you said this tool, so people offsite can look at the same documents that you're looking
Correct.
at?
What we're seeing there will be visible to everybody that you as an organization have given permission to. And it is totally at will. And the easy thing is to just do it via Gmail, and then you just make sure the person has Gmail, and you give that Gmail permission. And the permission is at 2 levels, maybe 3 now, but they're playing with that. The 2 levels are you can view only, or you can actually edit. If you're an input person, you can edit. If you are a CEO and said, I don't want to accidentally mess things up, you give them view only, and then they say, even if you push the wrong button, it won't change anything.
But that's at the dashboard level.
At the dashboard level and at the input level, sometimes there's internal formulas that you can hide in different ways. As a programming person, I can do that. This is what is called a program landscape. Dashboard, and this is when all these agencies across the area, schools, police departments, so forth. This is an actual project that I was engaged in, where everybody needed to, first of all, find out in this coordinated effort to help develop youth in a better situation in our region, that we need to find out what everybody is already doing in different areas that illuminate different outcomes with youth: academic outcomes, social outcomes, occupational outcome, and community outcome, awareness outcome. And what we did was we surveyed all these people, and these people gave us all the data and put it in there, and you can see that the schools had 9 programs that will give you academic support for the students, whereas the police department has 3 that directly have to do. I mean, the police department gets involved with all kinds of tutoring and support after school. We didn't know that, and it's amazing. Well, it's kind of slow. You may not be able to see this in time, but you will have an entire spreadsheet that will show you the details of that program and so on. And this is just the first step of a level 1 dashboard. Level 2 dashboard will go deeper into when these programs are actually started and when they end, and maybe some of the initial aggregate results. At level 3, you can drill down deeper and create actual details in terms of the specific numbers that you as a group. You can imagine this tremendous enterprise effect that you get from otherwise, herding a group of cats, they say, of these organizations. Can you imagine the police department here, the court system there? How do you herd them? They are very willing, but this is the way to herd them, is they herd themselves.
Can you put it back to your screen? Let's get a few quick questions.
Yes.
We'll wrap it up.
Right.
It's a little intensive on the internet.
Right. Where is it?
I'd like to just get people to ask a few questions. I mean, there's several things here that are exciting to me, and one is just this is all running not on an expensive project manager with Gantt charts and everything else, which I never did fully understand, but the basically open source Google Docs, and I've heard several people talk about with right passwords, this has a higher level of security than most small businesses can maintain on their server. So that's an exciting added piece. Let's just see if we have a few quick questions for Ho, and then this is just to scratch the surface, but questions, what I like to do at the end is questions, insights, takeaways, actions. So if we can just kind of go around quick.
It's stalling. It's the slides are coming out. But
while you're doing that, one thing I'll offer too, because I know at least one person has children in college, is that I use Google Docs to edit my daughter's papers. It's a great way because they had different software at school, and then I had different software that she did on her laptop, and the professor would have different. So it was just easy to use that.
Oh, she's in a different city.
She was in a different city.
Right.
She was in Greensboro College.
So let's just kind of go around. Who wants to just Questions, insights, takeaways.
If I needed something more powerful to share than just a single Excel spreadsheet, is there a database in the works that's going to be open source as well?
Oh, you mean Google?
Yeah, that's going to provide.
A database for
Does the apps have a database that interfaces with this, like Excel or something, right?
Yeah.
Or MySQL? Is that-
Yeah.
Okay.
We have MySQL, but it's Google.
Right.
Do you know anything that Google said about
all the Google applications and specifically Google Spreadsheet will interface to SQL. And you are the more acute mind than mine to make it happen.
That's what
But
you're
yes,
here, so
the answer
hopefully
is yes, definite yes.
you'll answer that in the
Yes.
next meeting,
Yes,
right?
my SQL is big, and Rick, and that is big. My SQL is a big generic base for all kinds of database interfacing with all these collaborative, and they make sure that they're standardized to that at least.
Dana, questions, comments, takeaways?
Well, I think of our application, but also I kind of chuckled when you said large government, and I thought maybe you could dismantle Congress and congressional people could spend time in their district and work online instead of spending all that time in D.C.
Yeah, but then it would all be red from lack of productivity. They wouldn't know what to do with it.
Oh, but they finally have accountability.
That's what, yeah.
We'd all have passwords.
Sorry,
I don't mean the detail. Let's go ahead. Insights, actions, questions, takeaways, anything for yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to take my sponge, go home, get back on Google again, and I'm going to squeeze it and see what comes out.
Okay, great.
All right.
Insights, takeaways, actions.
My son first introduced me to Google, and then one of the companies I represent for medical supplies, that's how they let me know how I'm getting paid and also how my client, the ship date and all that. And I was just thinking, well, this is some wild technology. So now I know how they're setting it up to communicate. It's a great communication tool.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think it's a sales application. I mean, if you got on the phone with the client and wanted to show them a document, you can do it real time and review it with them.
Yep. Yeah. Well, maybe we can get a 3-hour presentation. I'd like to do it on just how to map the process of a small business.
Yeah,
I think
that
that
would be
alone would be
awesome. I do
excellent.
too.
Why don't we push for that for January if you're open to it?
This is extremely
Absolutely,
informative.
yes.
I
Well,
didn't realize that's what you
Right.
did.
Go ahead.
No,
Let's get some
as far as the mapping the process is so usable because I've done that for medical office. A lot of times I'll go in there as
Take care, Carl.
as a patient,
Thank you,
as
Carl.
a client, and you'll go in there and go through the whole process. And it's amazing how the owner, the specialist of physiatry group or mental health, they have no idea how those people go through the system and how the roadblocks they run into from getting a referral to getting the person to fill out paperwork to getting them into the office, let alone the back office process of the billing, because all they're getting paid for is the encounter. And it's really neat because they're so concentrated on that encounter. They want to do the best job they can when they're in that room. When they leave, they want to have that note done, but they
Yes.
have no idea how it gets in there and how that person comes in there. So it's really great to have the flow chart, and this would be even better. I can see it setting off a few panics too, because when you show them, they go, "Oh my God, we need to fix that now."
Right.
And you've got to have the stuff in place to implement, of
Yeah.
course.
Oh,
That's where the
horrible!
hope finesse
Glad you didn't know
comes
that.
That I was talking about, right?
Yeah. And
Comments?
speaking from the point of view of someone who's benefited from this, I can tell you it works like a charm. And the way host set it up, I could, as CEO, I could look and at it every morning. I could tell, whether we're meeting our goals, what our projected revenue would be, who was doing their job and who wasn't doing their job well. And it created a sense of ownership for everyone in the company, as well as responsibility, going back to what you were originally talking about. So it does. It works just as well as he said it does. And
Excellent.
I like it.
Say this.
Good. Well, this is wraps it up for the year basically, and we're going to, our next meeting will be it's the second and fourth Tuesday of every month, so it'll be the second Tuesday in January.